everybody, it's Delilah and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you my birth story. I wanted to sit down and tell you guys all about it, everything that happened, all the little details before I completely forget them all. So I have written down everything on my phone and I'm really hoping I don't miss anything. There's a lot of things that happened in a very short amount of time, so I just really want to make sure I don't forget any of the details. This could be a very long video because I'll admit I'm not the greatest storyteller, but my birth story was quite the dramatic, like Hollywood style kind of experience, and I just really wanted to share it with you guys because I know I love hearing other people's birth stories. I don't know if that's weird, but I love hearing other people's stories because they're all so different. Like, there's no birth story that is the same. So I just wanted to sit down and get it all out there before I forget everything that happened because it was such a blur. This all happened 3.5 weeks ago. My daughter was born. Yes, we had a girl. Everybody thought it was a boy. Like, everybody thought it was a boy. There were very few people who actually thought it would be a girl, but I have a daughter now, which sounds so crazy to me. Like, that is just the weirdest thing to say, that I have a daughter. So crazy, but so wonderful. I'm just going to jump right into this. So on the morning of July 9th, it was a Sunday morning, I went into labor. Now, previous to this, I had a feeling that something was going to happen soon, but I had had this feeling for a while now, and I felt things kind of progressing. I did feel the baby drop quite low at one point, and I went to the doctor that day and my doctor confirmed that it was quite low and I was 2 centimeters dilated. I believe this was at my 38-week checkup. So I was feeling super hopeful. My husband and I actually went out and bought one of those exercise balls so I can bounce on it to hopefully progress things, but nothing happened, and the next day I actually felt as if the baby had gone back up because I felt way less uncomfortable. Like, the day before it was super uncomfortable, very hard to walk. I could just feel that the baby was very low, but the next day it felt like things had gone back up and I felt the same as I had before. I was quite disappointed and down. I was doing everything I could possibly do to get things going. This continued for the next few days and I was starting to get disheartened and thinking that things actually weren't going to happen for a while, but I still had this feeling that the baby was going to come early. So the night before I went into labor, I didn't feel any different than I had been feeling for the last few days. I had no idea that it was going to happen that night, no idea whatsoever. I hadn't felt any Braxton Hicks, any contractions. I had no idea what to be feeling, what it would feel like, no idea whatsoever that it was going to happen. So at 1:37 in the morning, I don't know why I remember that so distinctly, but I do, 1:37 in the morning I woke up in pain. It wasn't a lot of pain, and it wasn't like a coming and going pain. It wasn't like a period cramp kind of pain. It was only on one side. It was on my right side. It was just kind of there. I just assumed it was some sort of pregnancy pain because I got weird random pains every once in a while. That's what happens when you're pregnant. You get random odd things happening to you. So I just got up and I went to the bathroom because I had to go, and the pain kind of got worse like while I was in the bathroom, but it never like went away like a contraction would. So I just went to the bathroom, came back into bed, and was going to go back to sleep. And I was kind of dozing off into sleep when I was kind of realizing that this pain actually was starting to come and go. It started to fade away, and then I kind of got woken up by it again as it was coming back, and then it would sort of stay for a while and then it would go away. So I thought, okay, this is weird, this hasn't happened before, maybe this is a contraction. So I got up and I went to the bathroom again. At this point I was actually starting to get, this whole video might be a little bit TMI, but it is a birth story, so I don't want to leave too many details out. At this point I was getting some diarrhea, and I knew that that could possibly be a sign of labor because your body is kind of clearing itself out before you have to like push the baby out. I've heard of that before, so I kept that in mind, went to the bathroom again, and the pain kind of got worse and then it went away again. So I went back to bed. A couple minutes later, I had to get up and use the bathroom again, and this time there was a little bit of bloody show. So I got really excited at this point, thinking, you know, maybe something is starting to happen finally. So I got out, I downloaded the very first contraction app I could find, and I started to time my contractions. Or at least what I thought was contractions, because I had no idea what to feel. And it was still kind of just on my right side, but it was sort of starting to spread to my left side as well. So I started timing these contractions. They were 5 minutes apart right from the get-go, but they weren't super painful. I didn't feel like I needed to rock through them. I didn't feel like I needed to moan or anything. It started to feel like a period cramp pain, and the pain started in my sides and then it sort of went to my back. So it was started in the front and then went to the back. So after a few contractions, I figured I should probably wake my husband up, because these were already 5 minutes apart, and I knew that when contractions are 5 minutes apart and lasting for close to a minute, that it's time to go to the hospital. I wasn't panicking at all. I didn't really think that anything was going to happen for a long time, even though the contractions were so close together, because it wasn't that painful, and with first-time moms, the labor process is usually longer. So I wasn't expecting anything to happen for a long time. But I decided to wake Zach up just because I knew he would want to know. I knew he would be upset with me if I was in labor and he didn't know about it. So I woke him up. He was very confused at first, which was quite funny. It took him a while to realize what was happening, and once he realized what was happening, he panicked a little bit and he was up like that. He was wide awake and already like getting himself dressed, getting himself together, getting things in the van, and I'm just kind of standing there like, I don't know if this is the real thing or not. So the contractions very quickly started to become 4 minutes apart, and they were lasting 30 to 40 seconds, and they were very slowly getting a bit more painful. So I decided I would get myself ready, and I sat down and I started putting my makeup on, thinking that I had all the time in the world. Zach started getting very panicked. He wouldn't stop asking me if we should be going to the hospital, like, is this the real thing? Should we be going? He was getting very antsy. So we decided to call the doctor because these contractions were coming very quickly. We called the doctor, talked to her, and told her what was happening, and she said, yeah, you guys should come in. And it was funny because she had actually just come home from delivering another baby. So she said, maybe we'll see you tonight. I went right back to doing my makeup after that, and Zach finished packing up the van, and my contractions started to get progressively worse. With each contraction, it was getting worse. I had to start swaying through them, and standing and swaying at that point was the best way to sort of get through the contractions. Needless to say, I did not finish getting ready. I did not really finish my makeup or anything. Zach was pushing me out the door, like he was getting me out. He said, we have to go now. So we got into the van in a panic, like we totally forgot a whole bunch of stuff at home. It was a very rushed situation. So we got into the van, we started driving, and as we were driving, my contractions continued to get worse. They were at this point, I believe, 4 and 3 minutes apart, lasting about 40 seconds still. They still weren't like terribly long, but they were getting closer and closer. Fortunately, it was the middle of the night, so there was nobody else on the roads really. We only hit like one red light on the way there. We do live about 30 to 40 minutes away from our hospital, depending on traffic, so it's quite a drive, which was why Zach was getting on my case to get going. When we got to the hospital, there were no maternity parking spots left. They were all full. So we ended up parking in like a no parking zone because we just had no time to actually go drive into the parkade, and at this point I was not able to walk a long ways. So we ended up parking right in front of the doors in the no parking zone. Fortunately, we didn't get a ticket, thank goodness. But on the way up to the 4th floor, which is where the labor and delivery unit was, I had to stop multiple times on my way because of contractions, and it did not take long to get up there. We actually stopped timing the contractions once we got to the hospital, so I don't even know how far apart they were, how long they were lasting. I just knew that they were coming fast and they were getting bad. So we got up to the front desk and we started signing the papers, and the nurses were all very not in a rush. They were not in a rush whatsoever. They even told us like, it's okay, we've got lots of time, there's no rush. And I'm just sitting there like, are you sure? Like, these contractions are coming really fast and they feel pretty terrible. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling or what this is supposed to feel like, but they're getting pretty bad. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that as soon as we got to the hospital, I started to feel really nauseous, and I knew from hearing other people's birth stories that when you feel nauseous, when you get to that point, things are starting to get real. So I knew that this was a sign that something was going to happen soon and that things were getting intense. So we finally finished all the paperwork, and the nurse very, very slowly started walking us to the triage, or the room where they check to see how far along you are. There was another person in the room actually. There was a very small room and there were 2 beds and they were blocked off by curtains. So there was another couple in the other side of the room. We didn't see them, they were all blocked off, but they were being checked and examined first, and I was put into this other bed and I was told to like take my clothes off, to lay down, and to just wait. I felt like laying down made the contractions really bad. I wanted to stand, but at the same time my legs were starting to get really shaky and weak because of the pain. I could hardly hold myself up anymore, so I got into bed. I don't even really remember like taking my clothes off or anything. Well, my pants, not my shirt. Like my pants were coming off so that they could check me. I don't really remember that. At this part, everything started to become a blur because the pain got really bad all of a sudden. As soon as I laid down in that bed, things got like out of control. We were laying there waiting for the nurses to come in, and this couple in the other room was being examined, and she wasn't in very much pain at all because she wasn't yelling or screaming. She was casually talking to her husband. It sounded like her water had broken, but she wasn't actually in labor, so they weren't in any rush. And the nurses weren't in any rush either because they don't take first-time moms seriously. So I was laying there moaning and moaning in pain, in so much pain. I was holding on to Zach's hand so tight, like that was the only thing that I could do was just squeeze his hand. Zach was starting to panic because he didn't know what to do. Obviously he can't do anything really for me, so all he could do is just like stand there and hold my hand, and he was starting to panic. He was getting probably more panicked and antsy than I was. So they slowly, very casually started doing their tests on me finally. They took my temperature, they did my blood pressure, they checked the baby's heart rate, and I am just like writhing in pain. I don't even really remember anything. I was just kind of moaning and moving around, moving my legs back and forth and just like trying to get through it. And then before they checked me, the nurse actually said that they had to go and do something else first. So she left the room. She's like, I'll be back in a few minutes. That was the longest 3 minutes of my life. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know. At this point I was thinking to myself, like, if I'm not far along, I'm getting an epidural. I don't care how badly I want to have like this natural drug-free birth. I'm getting an epidural because this pain is insane and I cannot handle it anymore. Finally, she came back into the room and she checked me and she said, oh, you are fully dilated. You are ready to push. She's like, can you feel that pressure? Are you starting to feel like you have to push? And I said, no, but this pain is terrible and it has to be coming soon. And she kind of felt around a little bit more. She just like kept swirling her finger around there, and she's like, oh, your water is already broken. And I kind of looked at her like, what? My water isn't broken. I haven't had any gushing or crazy leaking or anything. And then all of a sudden, water just came like gushing out of me. I didn't see it, but I could feel it. Like it was a lot that just came out. So I guess my water had broken previously, but it had just been very slowly leaking. And when she was feeling around in there and moving things around, that's when water like finally released. And then we knew that we had to get me into the delivery room because this was going to happen soon. I hardly remember this part at all, but I remember they brought in a wheelchair, and I remember thinking, you expect me to stand up and sit down in this wheelchair right now? Like, how am I supposed to do this? But somehow I did. I managed to stand up and get in that wheelchair, and as I was doing that, I kind of remember them putting a hospital gown over top of my clothes because there was no time to even take off my clothes. There was no time for an IV. There was no time for an epidural. Nothing. We were going into this delivery room and we were going to start pushing as soon as the doctor came. So they were putting this hospital gown on me, getting me into this chair, wheeling me to the room, and then getting me onto the bed in the labor and delivery room. Shortly after I got into that bed, I started feeling the urge to push. If you've been in labor before, you know that you cannot control pushing. Like, your body will just start doing it for you. I was trying so hard to hold it back and I couldn't. Like, I was pushing and I was telling them, like, I'm pushing, like, I can't stop this, I need to push. And they're like, I know, it's going to be okay. Just wait a little bit longer, the doctor will be here soon. And I was just in complete agony. The nurses kept checking my blood pressure, checking the baby's heartbeat, because there wasn't even a time to put a monitor like strapped to my belly. They had to periodically check the baby's heartbeat to make sure everything was okay. So they were doing that. I'm breathing in pain. Zach is trying to feed me ice chips and water, and I'm just moaning and moaning and moaning and like telling them like I need to push now. It was probably like 10 or 15 minutes later and my doctor finally arrived, but it felt like forever. It felt like she was never gonna come and this baby was just going to come before she got here. But she got there just in time. Thank goodness. She got all set up and everything right away. So they got my legs like on the stirrup things on the side of the bed. They asked me how I wanted to push, and at this point like my legs were shaking so bad and I was so weak. I just said like I can't do anything else, like I have to push this way, like I have to be laying down because I can't stand or be in a different position. So they got me all ready and they're like, okay, you can start to push. Just push whenever you feel like pushing. And I thought this was kind of weird because in all of the birth stories and things that I've seen, they count your pushes and they tell you when to push and when to stop pushing. But the nurse and the doctor that was in the room just said, just push whenever you feel like pushing. So I did. When the next contraction came, like I know you're supposed to push during a contraction, and that's when the urge came. So I pushed when I felt like pushing, and it was like within a few pushes they said that they could see the head. They said that I was doing good and just to keep going, like just keep getting those pushes and like don't stop. When a contraction comes, just push and push and don't take long breaths in between, just push. I think it was about like 4 or 5 contractions, like 3 or 4 pushes during each contraction. Then I remembered at like the second contraction, my husband was watching the whole thing and he looked at me and he's like, there's hair, there's brown hair. And I was like, oh my goodness, there is a child coming out of me right now and the head is right there and this is gonna happen right now. And it just kind of struck me then. A few contractions later, she was born. Right before she actually came all the way out, I started to get a really bad burning sensation. I thought it would be farther back. How do I describe this? This is the baby's head coming out, and I felt a burning sensation like up here on me. I felt like I was going to rip open. I just had a moment thinking that I can't do this. And I think I said that in the delivery vlog too. I just said, I can't do this. And they're like, you can, she's almost here. I know it hurts, but you gotta do it. And I finally pushed through the pain. It was terrible, but I pushed through the pain. All of a sudden she was out and the doctor was handing her to me, putting her on my chest. She didn't cry right away. I don't even remember that, honestly. I don't really remember the first cry because I was just so in shock of how fast things happened, and she was there. She was here all of a sudden, just like that, she was there. And my husband beside me just burst into tears, and it was just the most magical moment. Oh, I'm gonna cry. It was the most magical moment. Like, there is nothing like that first moment when you see your baby for the first time and they're in your arms and they're looking up at you. Side note, these postpartum hormones are crazy. And I saw right away that she was a girl. Like, as she was being handed to me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a girl. It's a girl. Like, I couldn't hardly wrap my head around it, and it was amazing. Like, a minute later, Zach cut the cord. 2 minutes later, I pushed the placenta out, and after that, I don't even know what they were doing to me down there. I just remember holding my baby and just looking at her and all of her little features, and it was just the most beautiful moment. So I had no tears, so no stitches, which was unbelievable knowing how fast everything happened. I did have abrasions, which my doctor described to me as really bad road rash, and another nurse said to me it's like a ton of paper cuts all over down there. Sometimes I was told can actually be more painful than tears, because tears are stitched up and then they heal. Abrasions are a bunch of small wounds that reopen and reopen and reopen, and it can be very, very painful, but it probably won't leave as bad a mark as a tear would. I was just amazed that I had no tears. I didn't even have stretch marks. I don't think I have any stretch marks on my belly from pregnancy. I do have some on my breasts because they grew so fast, but none on my belly, no tears. So a little while later they finished like fixing me up and the doctor left and the nurses were just kind of finishing things up down there. I don't know what they were doing. I didn't care. I was just staring at my baby. A while later they kind of just left us alone in the room for a little while, and we called my parents and we told them, and they were just over the moon excited. And then the nurse came back in and asked if I wanted to start breastfeeding. After I fed her, the nurses came in and took her to weigh her and sort of clean her up a little bit, and she was 6 pounds 4 ounces when she was born, and they wrapped her up, swaddled her, gave her to Zach, and he held her for the first time, and we just kind of chilled in that room for like a couple of hours. Then they moved us to our recovery room, which we actually were able to get a private room. So thankful that we got a private room because we were able to have our privacy and our family was able to visit. You could fit quite a few people in the room, and we weren't surrounded by other new moms and their babies and their family. I was very, very thankful for that. The whole birth experience honestly was like my dream birth. It was very Hollywood style, fast and dramatic. It was completely natural, all natural, no medications whatsoever. Fast, like so fast. 2.5 hours from start to finish. My daughter was born at 4:18 a.m. in the morning. We only had, I think we got to the hospital 20 minutes before she was born. We were admitted at 3:55 a.m. and 4:18 she was here. So thank goodness Zach was pushing me out the door, and thank goodness he was home because he works 1.5 hours away. If he had not been home when I went into labor, he would not have made it for the birth of his daughter. So just so thankful the way everything turned out. Like, it was the perfect birth, I think. It was just amazing. My doctor actually said that in her like years and years, like she's been delivering babies for forever, and she said she has never seen a first-time mom go into labor and have a baby as fast as I did. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. I was just in shock. It happened so fast, but so glad it happened the way it did. I think I had a very, very good birth experience. So I think that's everything. I don't think I forgot anything. I hope I didn't. And I'm gonna go grab my daughter. She's cuddling with my husband right now, but I'm gonna go grab her and show you guys my daughter. See if I can get her up. She's stretching. Hi. Oh, she's getting hungry. So this is my daughter, Eloise Rose Loeppky. She weighed 6 pounds 4 ounces at birth and was 18 inches long, right? She is currently 3.5 weeks old. And her head is very floppy at the moment. And it's very awkward to try and hold her up and show you, but here she is. She's the cutest thing ever, right? So that is my birth story, and my camera is about to die, so I'm going to end this video very quickly. I hope you guys enjoyed my birth story and meeting Eloise, and if you guys want to see more pictures of her, I would recommend following me on my social media. I'll leave the link down below, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!